Let's find out what happens in Chapter 19 of Mr. Penguin and the Lost Treasure. Chapter 19. How Not to Be Eaten by an Alligator. 5 minutes later, Mr. Penguin, Colin, Edith, and Gordon were whizzing down the river on the back of one of the alligators. Mr. Penguin's plan had worked perfectly, with not even one accidentally being eaten part in it. Colin had hopped down and biffed all the beasts except one on the nose with a jolly well to show them who was boss. They'd splashed back into the shadows with their tails between their legs. Then Mr. Penguin had taken his now squashed and soggy fish finger sandwich out of his satchel and waggled it in the air at the last alligator. It had liked the smell of that. It had liked the smell a lot. So much so that Mr. Penguin passed the sandwich to Colin. This alligator let Mr. Penguin, Edith, and Gordon clamber onto its back without even trying to nibble one of them. Its eyes were too busy watching the sandwich Colin was holding. Colin and the sandwich then climbed aboard and dangled themselves just in front of the alligator's nose from a stick Mr. Penguin was holding. With the fish finger sandwich enticing it forward, the alligator had launched off the banks of the lagoon with the gang aboard. "Can you see anything?" cried Mr. Penguin, holding up on the sandwich stick as tightly as possible with his flippers. Colin gave the alligator a warning bop on the nose with a kung fu kick as it got a bit too close to the sandwich. Edith and Gordon scanned the jungle for signs of the O'Houlihan brothers. "Nothing," yelled Edith over the noise of the alligator's splashing legs. "Nothing apart from some trampled plants. So we must be going the right way." The alligator swung around the bend of the river, and Mr. Penguin saw from his map that they were now in the right place. He waggled the stick to the left, and Colin and the sandwich led the alligator to the edge of the water. Everyone hopped off. Mr. Penguin helped Colin off the stick, then threw his lunch to the alligator, who swallowed it down in one enormous gulp, and grinned widely before swimming off. It was the least he could do, seeing as the alligator had been so helpful and hadn't eaten them. Mr. Penguin watched it swim away. Sacrificing his sandwich for the treasure was obviously the right thing to do, but it was still difficult to think that he wouldn't get to eat it. "Come on," said Edith. "Stop dilly-dallying." Mr. Penguin straightened his hat and scrabbled up the rest of the bank to the sandy ground by the entrance to the tunnel. The O'Houlihan brothers were nowhere in sight. Mr. Penguin pulled his giant magnifying glass out of his satchel. He spotted some fresh footprints running out of the jungle toward the tunnel entrance and gold coin partly covered in the sand. "We've missed them," said Mr. Penguin, but Colin was holding up his pad. "I can hear something," it said. They all listened. Colin was right. They could definitely hear something. It was coming from above them, the sound of gruff male voices and the jangling of jewels. "Quick!" cried Mr. Penguin. "We aren't too late. They're still in the museum." And he ran into the tunnel, followed by his 3 best friends. That is the end of Chapter 19.